I think a lot of it comes from the music I listen to. And I think even in terms of my writing process, I I guess yeah, I listen to so much pop and I listen to so much kind of more rhythmically driven music that I was finding that spilling over into what I was writing. I guess because I would have grown up listening to like mainly sort of folk lyrical music. And I guess the shift in what I was listening to and what I was sort of consuming and what I was inspired by that very much led me to sort of marry that into my songwriting. And I didn't want to sacrifice like the lyrical component, but I definitely did want to like explore different kind of sonic avenues and stuff, in terms of genre and in terms of the kind of general direction. I guess the the process of writing the songs that ended up on the album, I always sort of found that the best songs for me and like the best way to sort of get into that songwriting mindset was to focus on like the most intense emotions and like the saddest parts of my life, the most difficult parts. Um, but I wanted to do that still, but work on it in this new way that sort of had this youthful energy. Because I guess my main approach to songwriting at the moment is like you can have these two things, like you can have this like intense joy of being a young person, but that comes with like so much like heartbreak and frustration and confusion. And I guess I wanted to marry those two things because I guess that's been my experience for the past like 4 or 5 years. I feel like as a young person you're under this intense pressure to be like having the time of your life at all times, and you can be having the time of your life, but you can also have these like moments of this crazy, intense, concentrated, like complete like sorrow and heartbreak, and those are part of it. And I guess the album is called In Between Moments because um, I kind of found myself, you know, in these really intense, sad heartbreak scenarios quite a lot. And what I've sort of learned as I grew older is to kind of life is all about the intensity, and you can enjoy the time in between, and not to kind of wish that experience away, not to wish the time away, and to wait for the next thing, and to be constantly moving, constantly going towards the next big event of your life, to sort of enjoy the periods in between and to recognize that it's all part of the one experience. So yeah, there's a song on the album called Hurt, and I wrote it after like a really really bad breakup, and I was just kind of in like a really terrible and self-destructive headspace. And listening back to it now, I feel like it is like a really kind of concise portrait of like where I was at mentally and like one of kind of the worst times of my life mentally. Um, and I'm quite I guess I keep kind of coming back to that song when I'm sort of listening back to the album. I keep coming back to it because I just feel like it is really really important to kind of speak openly about mental health at the moment, of people's mental health. I feel like a lot of people are really really struggling at the moment, and um, maybe feel as though they aren't in a position to vocalize that fully, or to put it into words. And I know for me, putting that out there sort of feels like I'm opening up about one of the worst kind of times in my life, that I was going through. And I don't know, yeah, I guess that would be the song on the album that I'm sort of excited to put out there. It's something that my kind of my sexuality and everything, it took me a long time to get to a point where I was comfortable talking about it. So I do think it is important for me to talk about it. And it's not something that has come up in my music yet. It's kind of in newer material. I've kind of started writing about it because it took me a long time to feel comfortable writing about it, because it felt like this thing that was this part of myself that once I put it out, I could never take it back in. And it kind of was a huge sort of release to kind of come out on social media. And I mean, there was loads of support, but at the same time, it was like, wow, no one cares. A lot of people probably put two and two together already. So I think it is important for me to talk about it because, I think with bisexuality in general, it does get erased a lot in terms of if you appear a certain way, if you appear straight, or if you appear to be in a gay relationship, it gets forgotten, it gets lost in the middle. And I think it is important for me to talk about my sexuality anyway, because I spent a long time not talking about it and going to extreme lengths not to talk about it. So it's definitely an important part of kind of who I am as a person. It's important for me to talk about it. But in terms of my music, I guess it's something that hasn't, I'm still kind of learning that this is a part of myself that it's okay for me to convey in my songwriting. It's still, there's a lot of like screaming in my mind whenever I try and talk about it in that way. But I think that's why it's so important for me to kind of lean into it. And in my recent songwriting experiences of touching on it, it's been like unlocking a part of my brain that I've been like kind of closing off for so long. And I think if I'm open about that and if I talk about that experience, maybe someone will hear that and not do the same thing that I've done for so long, or it might normalize it for even one person who sees it and is maybe like, oh yeah, I can be a bit more open about this with myself or others. I think that's incredibly important. One of the like absolute turning points for me in terms of like listening to like queer creators and being like, oh my god, I wanted it. King Princess was like a big, like I remember like when I was listening to 1950 and I was just like, oh, like this is great. It's not, I guess because like for context, I tried to do kind of a conversational hour in college last year on like representations of bisexuality in media, and across the research that I did for that, I was looking at like representation in songs of bisexuality and it's of any kind. And one of the examples was like, oh, this song is about someone having a threesome, or this, and I'm like, no, that's not the same thing. So I guess hearing these narratives that are like beautiful, pure, romantic love, it's not any different to another love song that represents like heterosexuality. Like there's nothing to set it apart from that, apart from the fact that it's coming from a queer artist. And I think that was like particularly inspirational to me because I was like, this is just a beautiful love song that just captures this experience. And I guess like at home as well, like I mean Pillow Queens as well, I remember listening to that and being, oh my god, like you can, this is, you can just create this is amazing. And I guess that sort of undid a lot of my own the walls I had up in my own head about songwriting and how to represent this in songwriting. And I guess that sort of set me off like, oh, I want to write about this, I want to write about these experiences that I've had. So yeah, I guess just seeing it like represented for what it is without it being like a big deal of like, oh, this is a song by a woman about a woman, or like this song by a man about a man. It was just like, this is a love song and it just happens to be in this context, and I was like, this is incredible and I love it and it's amazing music. Yeah, it's incredibly difficult for a lot of artists at the moment, but I think what has occurred to me, and I think what has occurred to other people as well, is it's important not to come to a full stop for me. And I feel like there is definitely a risk of that. I did sort of find myself thinking, oh, well, like if we just wait until this restriction is lifted, if we just wait until we can do this thing. But I think the thing that lockdown has kind of taught us is like, you're not promised anything. You're not promised how it's going to be next week. You're not promised. And I think that is how it worked before lockdown, but in a different way. I think we're more acutely aware of it now, that you just have to seize moments and you have to make things happen for yourself if you want them to happen. So I guess creatively, it's difficult not doing live music because that's the absolute kind of lifeblood for a lot of musicians. It's definitely for me, like I miss it like so intensely. But I guess live stream gigs, I've just kind of gone down a little like self-directed learning production journey. So I'm kind of hoping to incorporate that into live stream gigs going forward and kind of push myself to work on new things, to learn new things. And I just think the one thing is the amount of support for music that's out there at the moment is just so heartening. It's incredible to kind of know there are still people who are, you know, they're 100% like looking forward to people's albums. So like that's, you know, as scary as it is to be trying to like press forward creatively at the moment, it is reassuring to see the amount of people that are like still like really pushing Irish music and really supporting it. So yeah.